Hello, today we're going to talk about counting and looping within the programming language CoffeeScript, and the concepts here today would apply to most mainstream programming languages. So let's think a little bit about what you're doing when you're really counting. Most of us, learn to count at a pretty early age: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Inside of our brain, well, we've memorized the numbers for the most part, but by the time we get up to like 100, we're not really memorizing so much as we just know how to get the next number. So like when we say 199 and then we're going to count up to the next number, we know that we're essentially like adding 1 to 199. And we know that we're done with the hundreds because 199 is the last number in the hundreds, so the next number must be 200. But the basic thing that goes on in our brains is that we start with 1, and then we say it, and then we add 1 to 1, and then we say the new value of I, which is 2, and then we add another 1, we increment I again, and then we say the new value of I, and we basically repeat this process over and over several times. So in this program, I think I'm counting up to 8, and we'll see in a second whether that was correct. Yes, indeed. Okay. So the thing that's immediately seems funny to us is that we are essentially repeating the same statements over and over again, or we're repeating the same steps in our brain over and over again. And it turns out that just like humans are capable of like taking a two-step process and repeating it over and over again, so is a computer. So I'm going to rewrite this program to basically have the same effect, but be a much shorter program. So I'm going to say while I is less than or equal to 8, I want to do this counting step. And each counting step is basically two steps. It's saying the number and then incrementing the number inside our brain for the next step to happen. So this is my while loop here. And you can see here that it's still counting from 1 to 8, so the program works. Now here's where things get powerful. If I want to count up to, let's say, 70 instead, I only have to modify this one little expression here, and now I'll be counting up to 70. Okay, and you can see that the program finished at 70, and it hopefully should have started by printing out 1, and indeed it did. So I've now taught the computer how to count, and now I can do more interesting things. Like let's say I want to have it compute the first 70 squares. Instead of logging the value of I can log this expression here, I times I, and I'll get the first 70 squares. And if I want to maybe validate these last two values, I can do it manually in the console. So 69 times 69 is 4761, which you can see is this value here. And then 70 times 70 you can probably do in your head and know that it's 4900. So I'm pretty confident that I now have a program that computes the first 70 squares, and I'll make it even more general. I'll say compute first n squares, and I'll assign n to be 70 for this example. Actually, let's change it. Let's make it be 10. We'll make it be a little bit shorter program. And I'm going to say while I is less than or equal to n. And so when I run this, I can see that it's now computing the first 100 squares. So the powerful thing that's happening here is that these steps in lines number 5 and 6 basically repeat 10 times. And the reason that they repeat 10 times is that we've put the statements inside of a loop. So the loop really starts on the overall while statement is really like a 3-statement program. It's on the first line you have some expression that gets evaluated, and the value of this expression, whether it's true or false, dictates whether we execute the next two lines. And so the first 10 times we go through this loop, the value of I will be 1, and then 2, and then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And in each of these first 10 times through the loop, this is going to be true, and then these statements are going to execute. The statements inside the loop have to be, CoffeeScript needs to know where the statements end and begin. So I'll illustrate that by adding one more line to the program. So let's run the program just so you can see what it does. And so, in fact, let's put one more thing in here. So when I run this program, you see that the statement that logs make square is executing 10 times. You can't quite see that because it's scrolled off the screen, but let's make n be smaller. Let's just compute the first 3 squares. So when we compute the first 3 squares, we see that this statement executes 3 times. We can see that this statement must be executing 3 times because we can see its output 1 and then 4 and then 9. And statement 7 is also executing every time through the loop. We don't see the immediate side effect of it, but we can infer the side effect of it because we can see that the values of the squares are increasing, and the reason the values of the squares are increasing is because the value of I itself is increasing. And in fact, we can even make that more explicit here. So I'm going to say console.log I, and you can see that the first time through the loop you get these 3 outputs, and then line 8 causes I to have a new value of 2, and the second time through the loop you see these 3, and then the last time through the loop you see these 3. But here's the curious thing, why does line 9 only execute after the loop has finished? Well, it has to do with how I indented the line. So I basically tell CoffeeScript the structure of my program by the indentation, and CoffeeScript is kind of a unique language in how it denotes blocks of statements, but this lines 5 through 8 basically constitute what's called a block, and a block is simply a collection of statements that get executed as, you can almost think of it as like a little mini program that gets executed inside this bigger while loop. But then statement number 9 is outside the loop, so it doesn't happen until the entire compound while statement finishes. So this is probably a little bit confusing, and it's going to take a little while to sink in, but for now what you really need to understand are basically these concepts. We have this idea of a block of code that can be indented inside a loop. The loop executes every time this expression is true, and then once this expression becomes false, you exit the loop and then you continue processing statements outside of the loop. But this is the first time that we've seen CoffeeScript be able to execute statements multiple times for us, and that's a really powerful concept. So I hope maybe you can take some time now and pause this video and just sort of look at this a little bit and try to think in your mind what's actually happening here, and then we'll go from there in future screencasts. Thanks.